talking about months in the ICU, and then 2 months maybe of rehabilitation. Major burns are hard to take care of. So what I want to show you, and again, sadly I cannot send it to you, but it was from a course that I took one time, and obviously for reproduction issues, I cannot print it and send it, but what I can do is talk and show it to you. So basically it's a graph. Basically, as you see with the colors, what it shows is that the percentage of burns in their, as you can see over here with the little chart there, what it shows is that how much chance that they have of survival if they don't have, for example, facilities or high facilities and everything. And it goes with percentage of burns and what's the other one? And the age. So so it's a very good graph to kind of keep in your mind and maybe to put in your kit, and to have this in your mind when you're going to take your decision about who you're going to put on palliative care, who you won't put in palliative care. Because again, they will require a lot of treatments for those. And what it was from the course called Advanced Burns Life Supports Manual. And it was an awesome little course that I took one time, and that graph was very useful for that, to take those decisions. And this was for when there's MCI, so mass casualty incident. And we're talking about how sometimes disaster medicine can help us in those situations, was how it can help us to take a decision on should I or should I not continue my care. So how do we take care of those patients? So if you decide to take good care of those patients, don't use all your resource. Don't use all the gauze if you're going on the gauze person. Saran wrap. Saran wrap would be the best. I'm not saying if the person is still hot because it just came out of the burns. You need to cool them off, obviously, by having water, not too cold, not cold water, but water that basically you could be comfortable by putting your elbow in. And then you cool them off for 10 or 15 minutes for their burns. And then you put saran wrap on. Saran wrap will keep your fluids in, will kind of regulate their temperature as well. And as you can see, what I did is basically I just cut one part of a big, so basically it's like a big saran wrap. So now you have like two stuff. And I mean, you can do a lot of dressings with that little roll of saran wrap. So why saran wrap? Well, if you use it in the kitchen, what does it do? It keeps fluids in. It can also, you can nuke your stuff with it in the microwave. So basically, it can keep the heat inside as well. So basically, it can help keep your regulation and stuff. And I guess the way that they put it inside is a little bit like sterile. So it's a great dressing, and I read that in a few books now. I never heard about it before, and now it's like every place I go, they keep talking about the greatness of it, and I can keep seeing. And it made it in my first aid kit because of this, because there's a lot of more use to it, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in other videos. But there is awesome use to that stuff as well. So saran wrap can be very useful for burns, and the reason is that if, for example, we're talking about supplies again, a roll of saran wrap is like maybe $2 and $2 or $3, and you have two sides of this. So basically, I can keep two separate like this, and this I can probably roll up my whole self in there. So that's your main dressing that you do for your fluids until you take a decision. So it's a cheap dressing, effective dressing, and you can keep up all your fluids. It's easy to carry, and even the only issue is that big hole there. It kind of, it's hard to compress and everything. But I mean, you can still, this space over here, you can still fill it out. So basically, you can almost do a first aid kit just with that inside. I mean, I could put a pair of gloves in there, a breathing, a CPR mask. On the other side, I could put probably some sugar and a roll of Mipitel and a few Upside, and there you go. I got my first little first aid kit just in that. So you see how awesome this can be, and can be good. Also, we'll talk more in improvisation of wounds about that. So saran wrap it would be my first place to go, and now I made it in my kit, and we'll talk a little bit about when we're talking about evisceration. Saran wrap can comes as well for very handy. So basically I can roll up around my belly, keep a certain tension to my belly, because I mean, you know, like this has, and there's, you see, like, well, this goes down now, but see, like, it has a little bit of resistance to it. So it's a resistant, like, see, like, I mean, it took me a little while to pull that out. So it has some resistance to it, so it helps a little bit about my belly as well. So, and for example, we were talking also with the pneumothorax, the first part of the trauma. So now I can also make my three-corner dressing. So now for trauma, I mean, saran wrap is my dressing that I'm going to, and for burns as well. For smaller burns, we discussed before the AG, so the Aquacel AG or other products that have silvers in it, that's what you're going to need. But if in the self-reliance medicine and you're out of supplies, your second thing to go would be honey. Honey is very useful for many wounds, and also it's good for hypoglycemia. So again, for the hypoglycemia, where we're talking about in trauma, it can be bad. Well, now if you have a tube of honey, then you could spread it out on your wounds, and could really help heal the process of the wounds and everything. So for major burns, this would be my go-to stuff. Roll it in this and saran wrap. Assess your wound. Assess that decision algorithm of, is this person have a big chance of survival or have a small chance? Do I have enough supplies to help them survive? And am I willing to spend those supplies for them? And again, back on that decision, and that's why I started my series on that decision, because that decision tree will always have to come back in your mind, because it will make your decision about how you're going to use your supply, when you're going to use the supply, and what kind of supplies you're going to use. But saran wrap, pretty cheap, very easy to pack. Like you saw, I can do even small kits by that. So for example, what I could do with this sorry, buy a whole bunch of, you go at the dollar stores and you can buy like a whole bunch of them, cut them in two, put like a whole bunch of, you could put like honey, like little tubes of honey inside there, and a bunch of gloves on the other side, block 2 hands of that stuff. And any places that you could have burns, you could have this little kit ready. So for example, if in your house you have a generator at different places on your compound or whatever, or like your farm or whatever you're going to do, that have like gasoline, that you can have a flame going, then put those kits all around, so that way that if something happens. But again, don't forget that this stuff is plastic, it does melt, so you need to stop the burning before you apply this. It's like when you boil water on your stove. Once you took off the water out of the stove, it is still boiling, because the water has all the particles are moving and everything, so you have to slow down that process. That's exactly what you do with a burns. A burns is just nothing else than a transfer of heat from some sorts, electrical, chemicals, or heat from radiations or flame or something, that goes to the water around your molecules and in your body and boils it. So just like when you boil a pot of water on your stove, it boils it, and basically now you take off that. So if I have my hands over a flame, I take off my hands over the flame. Yes, the direct flame is not there anymore, so the direct heat, but the heat that it has produced through my water is still there. So that's why I need to put my hands in 10 to 15 minutes of water. Not too cold either, because now don't forget, we have lost not only the nerve part, depending on how deep your burn went, but not only you lost your sensation in the nerves, but also you lost that thermal regulation through your skins. and you want that it will be harder, it will be easier, for example, to freeze your hand or to do more damage to your tissue, which you're trying to diminish as much as you can. So as you take off your hands, you need to put it in water that is not too cold, not too hot again, because then you continue the process. But that if you put your elbow in, this is the best sample. So if you put your elbow in, you're comfortable. It's not too cold, not too hot. And then you put your, so the whole body is the same thing. If I'm in flame, then you roll into, you do your first stage, right? So duck and roll, or even use depending on which one you're going to use, but if you use, you can use baking soda that you could put on and stuff. So that could be another trick that you could have on stuff, and tons of stuff on the internet on how to make baking soda and use it even as a or sand. You could put sand if they have like actually a flame, but basically you have to stop the flame, stop the heating process. So that means that you need to cool them off with the water and stuff. Then you put the dressing, and then that dressing is this. After you put your dressing, then you assess. Is it a survival burns, or it is one that I'm going to do palliative dressing on? And so when I do palliative dressing, then again, you just keep them on there, and then you do your palliative care. So either just hydrate them or whatever you're going to do, and this could be useful. And another use of this, if you decide if they die or something, and we'll talk maybe a little bit more about that later. Maybe I don't want too much darkness, but if what we do when a person died, like what can we use to? Because I mean, they're gonna decompose in their body and everything. I'm not quite sure yet. Could be worth to experiment, but that could be another use of it. Just wrap the person, because in the hospital we put them in big plastic bags. So basically, that could be maybe your plastic bags. You just wrap the body into that stuff. And now suddenly you have like something. So even if it decomposes or whatever, it's going to stick into your layers of saran wrap. So saran wrap, very useful. Definitely my to-go choice with dress. And again, we're talking about large ones. If I have the finger ones, we're still going to go with the smaller blisters, because blisters are nothing else than burns, but burned by friction. So basically, just like we do friction fires, well, this is friction fire on your skin. So basically, that's how your skin gets, because whatever reason, like your boots or whatever, friction in your skin. And if I would do that for a long period of time, I'd probably get blisters. And then if they're small ones, so for example, if I just burned this part of it, that's why, and usually how you calculate the percentage of burns is your hand. Your hand is 1% of your body. So for example, my hand, if I put my hand on somebody else's body, it's not 1%, because my hand can be bigger than whatever proportion of their body. So you use the hand of the person to see what 1% is. So basically, so if you see, my face is about 1%. And then if you do 1, 2, 3, so let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you see this area here would be about 5%, and you have 9% rules charts that you can find pretty much on the internet and everything. You can get that stuff. So smaller, so basically about 1% wounds. Then you can put the one with AGs and stuff. And honey is another one that you can carry on. It has multi-use. Is that it's the cool thing with honey is that it can be used for many things in dressings, and we'll talk a little bit more in improvised dressing. I kept it there because it has this use for different dressings, and it can be used for the sugar content of it. So when we're going to do rehydration and everything, so honey could be used for that, and it can be used for also for hypoglycemia. So if somebody is low sugar, then you could use it for sugar. And for burns as well, it could be a very good one to replace. If you don't have silvers, then it could be good. So having a pot of honey could be a very good use to have in your cupboards and things like that. And also honey can be used for colds and stuff. So we'll probably do one just on honey because there's so many uses to it. So hopefully that was helpful.